وعليك السلام يا ولدي يا صاحب هادي قد أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولد الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه فقلت عليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله فقلت نعم إن جدك وقعك تحت الكساء فدنا حسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جدا والسلام عليك يا من اختاره الله أتأذنني أن أدخل معكما تحت الكساء فقال عليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك فدخل معهما تحت الكساء فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله فقلت عليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عم رسول الله فقلت نعم ها هو ما ولديك تحت الكساء فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء فقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله أتأذنني أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال له عليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي قد أذنت لك فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أعطيت نحو الكساء قلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله تأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال عليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي قد أذنت لك فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ بي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وقام بيد اليمنى إلى السماء فقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم أنا هرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم محب لمن أحبهم إنهم مني وأنا منهم فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليه واذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا لمحمد وعجل فرج. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان السماوات إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا عظما حيا ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال من جبرائيل يا رب ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. لا على لمحمد عجل. فقال جبرائيل يا ربي تأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا. فقال الله نعم قلت لك فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرأك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك عزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مضحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن لي ندخل معكم فلتأذن لي يا رسول الله. فقال رسول الله عليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء. فقال أبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. الله لمحمد عجل. فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني برسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفي جمع من شيعتنا محبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفظت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال فقال علي عليه السلام إذن والله يفزنا وفاض شيطنا رب الكعبة. فقال بي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني برسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفي جمع مشيتنا محبينا وفيهم مهموم إلا فرج الله همه ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاج إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام إذن والله فزنا وصيدنا فذلك شيئتنا فاذوا وصعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة رب الكعبة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
नारे तकबीर, अल्लाहु अकबर, नारे रिसालत, नारे हैदरी।
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي. يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وصي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله قدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا حاجات يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستوقظوا لي من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين.
पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलवात। अपनी आँखों से ही देख लेना मुफ्तियों तुम जरा चलते चलते, अपनी आँखों से ही देख लेना मुफ्तियों तुम जरा चलते। اپنی آنکھوں سے ہی دیکھ لینا مفتیوں تم ذرا چلتے چلتے روند ڈالیں گے فتوے تمہارے یہ جلوس ازا چلتے چلتے روند ڈالیں گے فتوے تمہارے یہ جلوس ازا چلتے چلتے کچھ قدم ہڑ بڑھا شہ کی جانب کچھ قدم شہ بڑھے ہر کی جانب کچھ قدم ہڑ بڑھا شہ کی جانب کچھ قدم شہ بڑھے ہر کی جانب بخش دی چند لمحوں میں شہ نے ہڑ کی ساری خطا چلتے چلتے بخش دی چند لمحوں میں شہ نے ہر کی ساری خطا چلتے تو کو زنجیر یہ کہہ رہے تھے اے یزید اب ہے تیری تباہی تو کو زنجیر یہ کہہ رہے تھے اے یزید اب ہے تیری تباہی جس کو بیمار سمجھا تا تم نے شام تک آ گیا چلتے چلتے جس کو بیمار سمجھا تا تم نے شام تک آ گیا چلتے چلتے تو کو زنجیر یہ کہہ رہے تھے اے یزید اب ہے تیری تباہی تو کو زنجیر یہ کہہ رہے تھے اے یزید اب ہے تیری تباہی جس کو بیمار سمجھا تو تم نے شام تک آ گیا چلتے چلتے جس کو بیمار سمجھا تو تم نے شام تک آ گیا چلتے چلتے لگ رہا ہے کہ میری لحد میں کوئی سورج طلوع ہو رہا ہے لگ رہا ہے کہ میری لحد میں کوئی سورج طلوع ہو رہا ہے دوستوں نے کفن میں رکھی تھی تھوڑی خاک شفا چلتے چلتے دوستوں نے کفن میں رکھی تھی تھوڑی خاک شفا چلتے چلتے بولے اصغر ہوں مکہ کر یہ رن میں بابا لے آئے تھے ساتھ ورنہ بولے اصغر ہوں مکہ کر یہ رن میں بابا لے آئے تھے ساتھ ورنہ میں مدینے بھی ہوتا تو آتا گھٹنیوں کربلا چلتے چلتے میں مدینے بھی ہوتا تو آتا گھٹنیوں کربلا چلتے چلتے خود کو روزے پہ جب شہ کے دیکھا میرا دل فخر سے یہ پکارا خود کو روزے پہ جب شہ کے دیکھا میرا دل فخر سے یہ پکارا مجھ کو لے آئے کربو بلا میں سات ماہ کی دعا چلتے چلتے مجھ کو لے آئے کربو بلا میں سات ماہ کی دعا چلتے چلتے اپنی آنکھوں سے ہی دیکھ لینا مفتیو تم ذرا چلتے چلتے پر محمد وآل محمد صلوات نور سے سجی ہے کربلا 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 دل کو کھینچتی ہے کربلا دل کو کھینچتی ہے کربلا فاصلہ ذرا سا بھی نہیں فاصلہ ذرا سا بھی نہیں خلد سے ملی ہے کربلا خلد سے ملی ہے کربلا جان کی سیاہی جب ملی جان کی سیاہی جب ملی شہن تب لکھی ہے کربلا شہن تب لکھی ہے کربلا جان کی سیاہی جب ملی جان کی سیاہی جب ملی شہن تب لکھی ہے کربلا شہن تب لکھی ہے کربلا سجدہ طول کیجئے نبی سجدہ طول کیجئے نبی پشت پہ ابھی ہے کربلا پشت پہ ابھی ہے کربلا. کائنات کو سمیت لے, کائنات کو سمیت لے, اس قدر بڑی ہے کربلا, اس قدر بڑی ہے کربلا. نور سے سجی ہے کربلا, نور سے سجی ہے کربلا. حرملا کے واسطے ہے موت, حرملا کے واسطے ہے موت. حر کی زندگی ہے کربلا, حر کی زندگی ہے کربلا. چومنے صغیر کے قدم, چومنے صغیر کے قدم, گتنیوں چلی ہے کربلا, گتنیوں چلی ہے کربلا. یہ کسی یزید کی نہیں, یہ کسی یزید کی نہیں, یہ حسین کی ہے کربلا. یہ کسی یزید کی نہیں, یہ کسی یزید کی نہیں, یہ حسین کی ہے کربلا, یہ حسین کی ہے کربلا. نور سے سجی ہے کربلا, نور سے سجی ہے کربلا. صلوات.
Before we begin tonight's majlis, if we can recite Surat Al-Fattah for Mawlana Iqrar Zaidi. As far as I understand, he was family to this community. So let's recite Surat Al-Fattah for him and of course all our marhumin inshallah. Rahimallahu man qara'a Surat Al-Fattah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع لذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وكذلك أنزلناه آيات بينات وأن الله يهدي من يريد. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In tonight's discussion, it's a bit of a heavy discussion. I want to look at a fundamental question that is often being raised, especially by the youths. And the question is a very important question. And the question is, how do we know that the religion of Islam is indeed the true religion? If you look at the world that we live in, there's a plethora of different religions in front of us. There are some who pick and choose from different religions, and they create a lifestyle from it. We as Muslims, we are exclusively dedicated towards the religion of Islam. Beyond that, we are dedicated towards the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt. But then the thought comes into one's mind, how can this religion be true? Or how is this religion considered to be true? Now the question is an easy question, but the question has to be dissected in a way that it's understandable by all of us. Let me give you an example. If I ask you which phone in the market, which mobile phone in the market is the best phone, there's a standard that you work by in order for you to come forward with an answer. That standard is you look at the features, you look at the different facilities that the phone provides, you look at, for example, the user interface and all of these different things. And then in the end you could say, well, this phone is better than all the other phones in the market. True or no? You look at the specifications, you make that as a standard to say and to come to the conclusion as to which phone is the best phone in the market. Likewise, with regards to religion, there are certain standards that we have to go by. There are certain things that we have to look in, certain features that we need to kind of focus on to explain and come to the conclusion that this religion is better than all the other religions that are there within the market. What are these standards? There are 3 standards. As per tonight's lectures, there are only 3 standards that I want to look into. The first is the message. The second is the messenger or the teachers of this message. And the third is the legacy that is left behind by these teachers. When you tick all of these 3 boxes, then can you understand which religion is superior than other religions. When you look at the message, specifically the message of Islam, you need to try and understand that when a religion comes forward and presents a message, does this message correlate with the aql of the human being or no? That's the first criteria that we go by. Is the message of a religion, it could be any religion, is the message of a religion something that is considered to be rational, intellectual? Is it logical or no? Is it easy to understand? Does the message sit well within my mind? Or do I have to perform mental gymnastics to try and understand what's being propagated to me? So here, this standard automatically diffuses a number of different religions that we have in our hands. For example, when you look at Hinduism, there are theological problems when it comes to Hinduism. You have, for example, many gods. Some gods, their kids were taken away from them. Then they had to seek help from other gods. This is a theological mishap. It doesn't make sense. And then for us to worship that God in return, it doesn't make sense. So all of a sudden Hinduism doesn't make sense. Why? Simply because it's not something that sits well within the rational mind. It's a story that has been told to the people. It has been indoctrinated to the people, and people believe in it in return. Why? Because parents believe in it, because grandparents believe in it, because communities believe in it. Likewise, Scientology. Likewise, for example, when it comes to Christianity. We spoke about the whole idea of Trinity, didn't we? And we said that Trinity is a very complicated doctrine to believe in. That Jesus Christ is God and God is the Holy Spirit, but they're not one in the same. It's 3 in 1, but 1 in 3. It doesn't make sense. It's very difficult doctrine to actually come to terms with. And beyond that, you find what happens is when people question the doctrine of Trinity, usually there is a reaction, a very violent reaction to say the least, that you should not question the doctrines of religion, you should simply believe in them. The religion of Islam is different. The religion of Islam promotes the idea of asking questions. You have any questions regarding our theology, come and ask, because you will find that there is an answer behind it. So when you look at Islam, when you look at the usul ad-din specifically, and there are three in origin, there are three usul ad-din. Imam and Adala came later on. But when you look at the Quran, there are three. There is Tawheed, there is Nabuwa, and there is Yawm al-Qiyamah or al-Ma'ad. All three of these can be understood by the logic of the human being. It can be understood by the intellect of the human being. You see, Allah has created the human being in such a way that regardless of our background and our culture, we have one thing in common, and that is logic. And that is the intellect. If the religion of Islam, the message of Islam was to be presented to a person living in the isolated villages in India and in the Antarctica, they would still be able to understand it because they both have logic. A sane mind, an intellectual mind will understand the precepts of the religion of Islam, the disciplines of the religion of Islam. Therefore, Islam has a sense of superiority because Tawheed can be deduced by logic, can be deduced by rationale. Once you understand that, Nabuwa can be deduced by rationale. Likewise, Yawm al-Qiyamah can be deduced by the rationale. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. When you come towards the ayats of the Holy Quran, Allah makes it clear, explicitly clear. We have sent down a prophet and we have given him bayyinat, clear evidences, clear proofs. Bayyinat means what? The prophet would come towards the people, he would propagate the message to the people, and he would present them with rational arguments. The job of the prophet wasn't just to come and perform miracles like a circus. The job of the Prophet was to come and present rational arguments to the existence of God. And there were people who used to follow and there were people who used to reject. You look at the example of Abu Dharr al-Ghafari. Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, when he came towards the religion of Islam, he did not see a miracle by the hand of the Holy Prophet of Islam for him to then come towards the religion of Islam. Many others, they saw miracles and they still rejected Islam. Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, they say he was a gatekeeper, one of the guardians of the temples. One day he sees a fox come. He comes near one of the idols. He drinks the milk that was presented for the idol. The fox drinks the milk, or the dog or whatever, drinks the milk and then urinates on the idol. Abu Dharr, straight away he thinks to himself, how can a god not protect itself from the urine of the dog? And I'm supposed to worship this idol? This is supposed to be my God? It can't protect itself, let alone have any power over me. Then he moves towards the city of Mecca, then he comes towards Ali alayhi salam, then he meets the Holy Prophet of Islam. See, the mind logically came to the understanding that there is a superior being that is beyond or much more powerful than the idol that's there in front of me. Miracles was just to emphasize the message of the Holy Prophet of Islam. Today, none of us have seen a miracle from the hands of a person, let alone a prophet of God. Yet we still believe in the religion of Islam. Why? Because it is something that is succinct with the rationale of the human being. It is intellectual. It is an intellectual principle, and we all accept it. When something is aqli, when something is intelligent, or something that is rational, logic, that sits well in the mind of the human being, it does not need to be imposed. So when the Imam reappears, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, because he will revive the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And because that message is based on logic and rationale, people will automatically follow it. It's not like the Imam will have to fight tooth and nail to kind of establish the religion of Islam. People will come and accept it because it's something that will sit very well within their minds. When you therefore look at science, every generation, science progresses. There is an advancement in science, there is an advancement in philosophy. In fact, every science goes through phases of evolution, doesn't it? The way the sciences that we have is far much superior than the sciences that existed 100 years ago. As science increases, technology increases, as there is an advancement in philosophy, you'll find that the roots of religion will not be shaken. Why? Because the roots of religion are based purely on rationale and logic. In the medieval period, when science began to progress, when philosophy began to progress, people lost appreciation on Christianity. Because Christianity was a religion that was not founded on logic and rationale, especially when it comes to the doctrine of the Trinity. All of a sudden, when science began to increase, people started to lose respect for Christianity. And then you had the whole schism that took place between the church and the church and science, and all of the mass killings that came forward as well over time. So you realize that when there is a religion that is based on rationale, that religion supersedes all the other religions. Then you come to the second stage. The second criteria, the second standard that we have is to look at the messenger, is to look at the teachers of this message. And we have many, many teachers in this religion, especially when it comes to the teachings of the religion of Islam. And I'm not just talking about the 12 Imams, I'm talking about everyone that you can think of. From the Abbasids to the Umayyads, everyone, they were all considered to be teachers. And we have many ulama mentioned within our books of history, within the books of the Ahl Sunnah as well. The second criteria that we establish is these teachers, did their message synchronize with the message of the Quran, with the message of Islam? When they propagated and taught the religion of Islam, was it in sync with the message of Islam or no? All of a sudden, you isolate a big group from amongst them because you find that they were considered to be teachers and representatives of Islam, but they did not represent the message of Islam truly. Today, there are people who will vehemently support the Khilafah of Yazid ibn Muawiyah. We know in our history that Yazid stood in opposition to the message of Islam. Just because you have a person who wore, for example, who was considered to be a teacher of the religion of Islam, does not mean that he represented the teachings and the principles of Islam. There were many who were considered to be great ulama, but they were sympathizers when it came to the Umayyads and towards the Abbasids. This isolates them altogether. The second question that we ask is, these teachers, how did their authority be established? How did they establish their authority as teachers of the religion of Islam? And I'm talking about Khilafah specifically. Is it consistent between one caliph and another? Or is there levels of inconsistencies? When there is inconsistencies, then you know that there is something dodgy that's going on. But when you find that there is consistency over 200 years, for example, then you realize that it is closer to the reality, because there is a standard, it's systematic, and that standard is being followed. Let me give you an example. When you ask the Ahl Sunnah, and a lot of youths have this question, how do I know that Shia Islam is the true religion? You use these questions, you ask these questions, then you compare both madhabs and see which one is systematic and consistent. So when you ask the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, how is a caliph chosen? They have three ways. They say there are three ways in which a caliph can be chosen. The first is through Ahl al-Hilli wal-Aqd, is when a group of people get together and they appoint a person to be the caliph. When we ask why, they say, well, that's how Abu Bakr was chosen. That's how Uthman was chosen. That's how Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam was chosen. Allahumma salam. So, okay, fine. What's the second way? They say the second way is when one caliph directly appoints the next caliph. When he then appoints the next caliph cannot go against, cannot refuse the words of the previous caliph. We asked why? They say the reason is because this is how Umar came into power. They say the third way is through military power. Say why? It's because how Muawiyah came into power. So you have different inconsistencies, different ways in which Khulafa came into power. When you ask the Shia, according to what standard is an Imam chosen? There is only one standard that we follow. It is Rabb al-Alamin who chooses the Imam. Whether it be the first, whether it be the middle, whether it be the 8th or the 3rd, whether it be the 12th or the 1st, all of them are directly chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there is consistency. There is a standard that is being placed and the standard is being followed. Whereas when you look at the other madhab, there is no standard, there is no consistency. The third question that we ask is, between these scholars or these teachers who represented the religion of Islam, is there synchrony between them in their opinions? Or is there an opposition between their opinions? And now we've spoken about this, yes, when we speak about the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. We said something very profound the other night. We said that when it comes to the difference of opinions between the Imams, does it exist? No, it doesn't exist. When one companion would come and ask a question to the fourth Imam, and then later on, 20, 30 years later, ask the same question to the sixth Imam, he would still get the same reply. Likewise, and many of the Imams were found to be the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because the same questions were being asked between multiple Imams, and the answer was one and the same. And this was the criteria to distinguish the right Imam. Can we say the same with regards to the other madhab, for example? When you look into the world of fiqh, within the world of fiqh, we have four schools. Al-Malikiyya, Shafi'i, Hanafi, Hanbali. When it comes to wudu, there are different opinions of how the Prophet performed wudu. When it comes to salah, there are different opinions how the Prophet used to stand for salah, how he used to perform sujood, how he used to perform ruku, what he used to say within these places in salah. Well, salah is one and the same, wudu is one and the same. Why do we have such variations of different opinions? There is no consistency when it comes to fiqh. Likewise, when it comes to aqeedah, you have the Mu'tazilites, you have the Shafi'is, you have the Khawarij, you have, for example, the Murji'as, you have Qadriyas, Jabriyas, all of these different madhabs that came and popped out of nowhere. When it comes to the sources of religion, when it comes to fiqh within our madhab, we refer back to the Ahlul Bayt. When it comes to aqeedah, we refer back to the Ahlul Bayt. We don't refer to different scholars when it comes to different areas of the religion of Islam. Our religion, our source of religion is one and the same. What's even beautiful beyond this is when you actually examine the schisms that existed between Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik, it's quite extensive. It's quite deep. They used to resent each other to certain degrees and extent. It was all about the madrasa of Medina versus the madrasa of Kufa. And what's even more beautiful is both Imam Malik and Imam Abu Hanifa, their teachers were whom? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad. Both of their teachers was Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. And this is something completely baffling. Why is there such obsessiveness when it comes to students when the teacher was there? When you look at the words of Abu Hanifa, for example, لَوْلَا سَنَتَانِ لَحَلَكَ النُّعْمَانِ. These are profound words. If it wasn't the 2 years that I spent with Imam Sadiq, I would have never been. Meaning what? I would have never been the person known as Abu Hanifa. You have billions of people following Abu Hanifa today. Yet his knowledge was credited because of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Likewise, Imam Malik. Imam Malik himself, he testifies that my teacher was as-Sadiq alayhi salam. What's even more beautiful than this is when you actually refer to their biographies, they explain this and they testify that my teacher was the sixth Imam. But when you refer to the biography of the sixth Imam, do you find names of their teachers? There are no teachers of the sixth Imam. When you refer to the biographies of any members of the Ahlul Bayt, you will not find names of their teachers. They were not taught. You refer, this is a challenge, go and refer and read the biographies of the Imams. You will not find names of their teachers because they did not have teachers. Whereas the other madhab, they all had teachers and eventually they came back to the Ahlul Bayt for knowledge. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. You have the likes of Az-Zuhri, Muhammad ibn Muslim Az-Zuhri. Do you know who Zuhri was? Imam Malik, when he was asked about Az-Zuhri, he says, according to my research, I have not come across a single scholar like Az-Zuhri, especially in the city of Medina. Not one person like Zuhri. The way he was considered to be a faqih, he was a marja of his time. People used to go and flock to him for religious guidance, to understand the sunnah of Rasulullah. He was considered to be a tabi', so those who came after the Sahaba. Az-Zuhri, Muhammad ibn Muslim Az-Zuhri, was considered to be the top leading marja of his time. And Imam Malik, he says that when it comes to fuqaha, when it comes to being a narrator of hadith, there was no one like Zuhri. A man by the name of Ma'khul, Ma'khul was asked, who is the greatest scholar in your opinion within the city of Medina? He says Az-Zuhri. And then he says after him, he says Az-Zuhri. He says after him, Az-Zuhri. Baba, is there no one else after Zuhri? He says, what can I tell you? There is no scholar like Az-Zuhri. You know who the teacher of Az-Zuhri was? Imam Sajad alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Imam Sajad alayhi salam was the teacher of Az-Zuhri. It's very beautiful when you read the biography of Zuhri. They say Zuhri was one of the judges of the Umayyad dynasty. He was a judge, he was a qadi. They say one day there was a case, a man came towards him and he judged that this person is to be sentenced. Capital punishment, this person has to be punished. When the man was taken away, this is a very famous narration by the way. When the man is taken away, when the criminal is taken away, he's punished. Whilst the punishment is being acted out, the person dies. The person dies. He's not halfway through his punishment, but the person dies. Az-Zuhri, do you know what happens to him? He breaks apart. He goes into deep crisis. He doesn't know what to do. He blames himself. I'm the one who killed him. He wasn't supposed to die. He was just supposed to be beaten and then released. But he ended up dying. It's my fault. Now his family dependent on him. Now his family there in stress and so on and so forth. It's all my fault. You know what Zuhri did? Zuhri abandoned his home. He left his family. He went to the outskirts of Medina. He put up a tent and he started living in the tent. He isolated himself completely with society. This is what happens to some of us, isn't it? When we lose a close one. For example, we enter a dark hole. And it's a rabbit hole. We just go deep and deep and deep and deep. We isolate ourselves from society. We're walking amongst the people in society, but we're not with them. We're somewhere else. This person isolated himself completely from society. Imam Sajad alayhi salam came to him. He said, Ya Zuhri, your hopelessness in the mercy of Allah is a greater sin than the sin of your judgment. He says, Ya Zuhri, return to your home, look after your family, but compensate the family because of your judgment. Compensate, give blood money, and carry on living your life. Zuhri replies, he says, out of all my knowledge and my learning, I was ignorant about this. And if there is one person that I am indebted of, it is Zayn-Al alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. Because he was able to pull me out from that darkness. You know, Az-Zuhri, when you read his biography, people don't know whether he was a Shia or a Sunni. There are three opinions. Some say he was an anti-Shi'i Sunni, meaning he was a pro-Umayyah supporter, sympathizer. And we have narrations where, for example, he used to sit in Masjid al-Nabi and he used to abuse Imam Ali alayhi salam. They say one day he was abusing Imam Ali alayhi salam. Imam Sajad walked in and then rebuked and reprimanded Az-Zuhri. So we have evidences to show that he used to be Umayyad sympathizer. Others say no, he used to have affection towards Imam Zayn-Al alayhi salam. So he was a Sunni, but he used to be a pro-Alawi Sunni. He used to be a pro-Shi'i Sunni. Then the third say that no, he was a Shi'i. You know, the third categories of ulama, they came and they said, why don't we join all of these different opinions? They say earlier on in his life, he used to be anti-Shi'i. But then because of this incident with Imam Sajad alayhi salam, he developed such affection and love for Imam Zayn-Al that he became his student. And he became a Shia. And we have evidences to show that the Bani Umayyah, some of them, the governors and so on, they would come and they would abuse Zuhri because he became the student of Imam Zayn-Al alayhi salam. So you find that great, profound scholars, people with ilm and knowledge and experience, they all were students of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Again, you come back to the standard that we created. Who were these scholars? How did they establish their authority as teachers in the religion of Islam? Were there any schisms or oppositions between them, amongst themselves, or no? Was there synchronization between them? And the third standard that we spoke of is the heritage that they left behind. How did they teach the religion of Islam? Because remember, as part of society, there are many problems and challenges that we face and we observe in society. And every challenge, or behind every challenge, there is a solution. Behind every problem, there is a solution, isn't there? When we have When we have deep problems, when we have, for example, contemporary problems, we need to come up with contemporary solutions. Every problem has a specific solution behind it. When you look at the life of Imam Sajad alayhi salam specifically, the Imam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The Imam, the heritage that he left behind was the strategy of the teachings that he directed towards his people. It was a time of moral decadence. It was a time of spiritual decadence. It was a time of economical corruption. And the books of history are very clear with regards to this, especially during the Khilafah of Marwan ibn Hakim and so on and so forth, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan and those who came after him. Imam al-Sajjad had one problem. He couldn't just sit on the minbar and said, Ya ayyuhan nas, come towards me and I'll give you the message of Islam. The true, untainted message. The Imam had to find modern solutions to the problems that he faced. The Imam would, for example, sit privately with certain scholars, certain people. The Imam used to, for example, answer questions through Q&A sessions. The Imam used to, for example, when possible, he used to give lectures and so on and so forth. The Imam, through charity, would guide people. The act of giving money is profound in bringing people towards the religion of Islam. One day he goes to a beggar begs him for money, the Imam gives him the money in his hands, takes his hand and kisses it. The Imam was quite active when it came to the areas of charity. But one profound strategy that the Imam employs is that of dua. In a world where there is spiritual decadence and spirituality is declining at its finest, the Imam alayhi salam revives and nurtures the people through his du'as and his collection of du'as. When you ask me, how can you tell that Shi'ism is greater than all the other madhabs that are out there? I say to you, find me a different madhab that has collections of du'as the way we have. I guarantee you will not find any. Scholars have tried. There are examples of du'as written by scholars in history, but it does not come close to the eloquence of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. Likewise the Imam al-Husayn, likewise Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. The collection of du'as that we have, it's gold in our hands. They all have dust and sand in their hands. We have gold and treasure, and we ought to hold on to it. When it comes to the time in his community, or the community in his time specifically, it was in spiritual decay. The du'as of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, Sahifa al-Sajjadiyya, known as the Zabur of Ali Muhammad, you found that through it, he was able to nurture the spirituality of the people. You can't actively stand in front of people and teach them about Tawheed, but if you were to just synchronize it through dua, you will teach that person about Tawheed. You would teach him about Nabuwwah. You would teach them about Imamah. You would teach them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the day of judgment. And that's exactly what the Imam did. The du'as of Imam Zayn-Al, number one, they are intellectual and spiritual, and a spiritual university that we have within our hands. They say, Allama Mar'ashi, Ayatollah Mar'ashi, rahmatullah alayh, as a token, as a gift, he took a copy of Sahifa al-Sajjadiyya and he sent it to whom? Allama Tantawi. Allama Tantawi was in Egypt, Al-Azhar University, the great scholar of his time. He has a tafsir of the Holy Quran. When he sent a copy to Allama Tantawi, he opens it, he's baffled. He's completely baffled. He writes a reply back to Ayatollah Mar'ashi. He says, where did you get this book from? It is our misfortune that we have not come across a copy like this. Because when I read these words, it tells me that these words are the words greater than the words of creation, but inferior to the words of the Creator. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the wasila of Imam Sajad alayhi salatu wassalam to heighten our ma'rifah of him, to help us understand his movement, to help us understand and create a relationship with his du'as, inshaAllah. We pray through the wasila of Imam alayhi salam to forgive our sins and the sins of our marhumin, inshaAllah. Rahimallahu man kara'a Surat Al-Fattah.
الہی ببیمار دشت بلا جو بیمار ہو جلد پائے شفا الہی برائے امام زمان ہمیں ہول محشر سے دے تو امان قیامت کو معشور ہو بالی اٹھے قبر سے کہے کہ ہم یا علی اے پانچ و نو مل چہاد رہتن احمد و علی زہرا و حسن شبیر سے لے تا امام زمان شبیر سے لے تا امام زمان ایک ایک پہ صدا صلوات پرو صلوات صلوات کے اس پہ نثار گوہر جو نبی ہے بلند صفات ہوئے صلوات صلوات و سلام یا امام زمان فرماؤ ظہور یا امام زمان صلوات السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ السلام علیک یا حبیب اللہ السلام علیک یا امیر المؤمنین وابن سید الوسیین السلام علیک یا فاطمة الزہراء سیدة النساء العالمین السلام علیک یا حسن المجتبى السلام علیک یا ابا عبد اللہ الحسین وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين السلام عليكم يا شهداء كربلاء جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا مولى وابن مولى السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء السلام عليك يا سلطان أبا الحسن علي بن موسى الرضا ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته